Hello family, welcome back to the channel, The Business Strategy Analyst. This is your usual presenter, Jules Nartey-Tokoli. And today we are continuing with our series of the value pyramid of management, looking at the third component on the pyramid. We have already looked at nature and society. In case you haven't seen those videos yet, please look in the channel right here and you'll find them to look at them and acquaint yourself with what we've been doing so far. So today, like I said before, we are looking at the third most important component on the value pyramid of management, and that is the human resources of the organization. So we are asking a question. What place have human resources in your strategy? And to begin with, I have this quote by Jack Welch, which I want to share with you. And it says, quote, "To manage people well, companies should elevate HR to a position of power and primacy in the organization and make sure HR people have the special qualities to help managers build leaders and careers." Unquote. It is very likely that any business owner or board director or management director or chief executive officer would answer the question, what place have human resources in your strategy, with a wrap on how important their employees are to their organization. But in practice, do they really mean it? If that was the case, shareholder value maximization would not be made the prime focus of the organization's strategy. In our discussion of the value pyramid of management, the first two most important components we looked at were nature and society or humanity. This would be considered as constituting the external environment of the organization. External though they are, these have been demonstrated to be very crucial to the existence and survival of the organization. Starting with this part of the series, we shift focus to the internal environment of the organization. On the value pyramid of management, or VPM, human resources are the most important internal stakeholder. Some may disagree with this position, since management is needed to mobilize and coordinate the resources required by the organization, and human resources are included in those. However, management itself is made up of humans whose resources steer the organization. This is where the importance of Jack Welch's statement, for me, comes into play. It is self-defeating to treat human resources as second fiddle in the strategy. Such an approach comes as a result of condescension, which prevents elevating human resource management to a position of power and primacy. Hence, top management is hardly regarded as being part of the human resources of the organization, since they are not considered to be employees. Yet, if an employee is a person employed for wages or salary, as the concise Oxford Dictionary puts it, then technically top management are also employees, and for that matter, a part of the company's human resources. This raises a very critical issue: the dichotomy between management and employees. Such a separation is archaic and needlessly disdainful. Management alone cannot handle all the operations of the organization. In fact, they alone cannot run its affairs. It takes the collaborative efforts of all and sundry in the organization to do so. And when management recognizes that and treats their employees, or other employees for that matter, since they themselves are employees, and they treat them as partners, that is when their headaches of unionization and industrial actions will be curtailed, if not eliminated altogether. Having established the critical position of human resources in the strategy or organization, let's now look at what changes this kind of approach can bring about and how they would invariably affect productivity. So let's look at the first changes under the subheading, a fresh approach to human resources. And that is respect. The foremost ingredient for higher productivity as a result of optimal engagement of human resources is respect for them. Respect for employees would go a long way to change the way management views them. Oftentimes, management would usually expect the respect to be accorded it first by the employee instead of vice versa. And since they view themselves as benefactors of the worker, they don't entertain any nudge to reciprocate that respect. Rather, they tend to instill fear in the employee to entrench their power. The irony is that these same members of management will be resentful if central government acted in a similar fashion. What they forget, though, is that they are themselves also running a small-scale country. Indeed, the fact that some corporations run economies that are far in excess of the GDP of some or most countries is an indication that they are nations within nations. If now they expect central government to respect them and the rest of their citizenry, should they expect anything less of themselves towards their employees? However, this will be effective only if management, as stated earlier, view themselves as employees themselves. Then they would appreciate more readily that what is good for the goose is good for the gander. In this case, respect. Next, employees as partners. When management accords respect to employees, it will not be difficult for them to transform them into partners. In the knowledge economy, a knowledgeable workforce is the most valuable resource of any organization. And since knowledge is no longer the preserve of management, it is time the ingenuity of employees were considered as enough equity in an organization, even more valuable than the shareholders' money. In times of a downturn in business, what most organizations find plausible to do is job cuts. They do so invariably because they have failed to transform their employees into partners. If they did, the employees will be ready to sacrifice their very last drop of blood, as it were, to salvage the organization, since they are part owners. However, in order not to vary their comfortable circumstances of their personal lives, management rather finds it prudent to get rid of the very resources that will be helpful in getting the organization out of the whirlpool, thus shooting itself in the foot in the process. When one considers himself as the owner of a property, generally, they will do their best to maintain and preserve it. If this simple truth motivates management, it will drastically revolutionize the recruitment process and what to look for in an employee. The focus will tend to be on competence, attitude, the mindset, rather than on educational qualification. But this will succeed even better if, as Jack Welch put it, HR were elevated to a position of power and primacy in the organization. Next, restructure reward systems. Salaries and perks that are tied to educational qualifications are retrogressive. To increase productivity, rewards should be progressive. Employees should find themselves earning what they really worked for. In such a situation, if a degree holder performs subpar, he earns less than a technician who performs above par. After all, it is not the degree that gets the job done. It is the person. Thus, if the graduate is not able to outperform another who has a lower educational qualification, why should he necessarily be the boss and earn a higher salary with nice perks? Next, review appraisal systems. HR should take a relook at its job appraisal systems. Currently, the most popular methods that are being employed in big organizations as performance appraisal processes are management by objectives, 360-degree appraisal, behavioral observation scale, and behaviorally anchored rating scale. None of this gives attention to the critical human capabilities that drive success in the creative economy. For instance, they do not measure the entrepreneurial capacity of the employee, which is essential for developing new products or enhancing existing products or creating new markets. In other words, the performance of employees should, among others, be measured in terms of the value they add to the organization's business and adequately reward such. Management should therefore devise more effective appraisal metrics that reflect more accurately the value that an employee adds to the business. And in doing so, management should not exclude itself from the appraisal process. As the saying goes, if a fish rots, it begins with where? The head. Hence, since management is the head, its performance is most critical in determining the productivity of the organization. Hence, it needs to be appraised first before extending that lower. Next, remove fear. Morbid fear in an organization is debilitating, to say the least. Management should not use fear as a method of administration as pertains in most organizations today. When employees are filled with fear, they are unable to make suggestions to management. They are also disabled to criticize policies and decisions that are obnoxious. The result will be for them to keep their mouth shut and battle it all in. Now, that can be very, very demotivating and counterproductive. Also, when they are afraid to experiment, employees are not able to create and innovate. With the wisdom of just top management running the organization, there comes organization inbreeding and mediocrity. Next, render human resources their proper place. For management to really live up to its mantra that an organization's human resources are its most important resources, it has to move away from lip service and act accordingly. by abolishing the chasm between management and employees, and by elevating human resource management to a position of power and primacy, the organization will see a turn in its productivity for the better. Also, by according respect to its employees, transforming hard-working employees into partners with appropriate reward schemes, and by removing fear from the organization, employees will be motivated to give of their all for the good of the organization. So far, what have we been looking at? What are the takeaways? So here are the highlights. For management to really live up to its mantra that an organization's human resources are its most important resource, it has to move away from lip service and act accordingly. By abolishing the chasm between management and employees, and by elevating human resource management to a position of power and primacy, the organization will see a turn in its productivity for the better. Lastly, but not the least, by according respect to its employees, transforming hard-working employees into partners with appropriate reward schemes, and by removing fear from the organization, employees will be motivated to give of their all for the good of the organization. So, friends, family, here we come to the end of another episode of the Business Strategy Analyst, and looking at the series, The Value Pyramid of Management. Like I said before, if you haven't seen the other components yet, the videos on nature and society, please look for those videos right here on the channel. The next most important component of the human resource, of the value pyramid of management that we're gonna look at in our next video is the customer. Please don't miss that. And hey, thank you so much for the support you've given me so far. I really appreciate your viewing my videos and subscribing and liking and sharing. In case you haven't subscribed yet, maybe it's because my videos don't really appeal to you. And no hard feelings about that. But if it's otherwise, please do the needful and subscribe and like and share. And also, please remember to leave your comments, whether you agree with what I've been saying or not. Let's share our views and let's all help to elevate management in Africa. So until the next time, the next video on the customer, it's goodbye from here. And thanks again.